Act 1. The Incident. On September 16, 2006, a woman burst into a hospital in East St. Louis, cradling a lifeless newborn in her arms. Her clothes were stained, her face pale, and her voice trembling. She told the nurses she had just delivered the baby alone in a park. It was stillborn. She was in shock. But when doctors tried to examine her, she refused, flat out. No medical inspection, no questions. Just hours later, she was organizing a funeral for the baby, naming her Tiffany. And no one, not her doctors, not her boyfriend, not her neighbors, had any idea she was even pregnant. That same week, an entire family vanished. A young mother named Jamila Tunstall, 7 months pregnant, and her 3 children, 7-year-old DeAndre, 2-year-old Ivan, and 10-month-old Janelle, gone without a trace. Her phone went silent, her home looked undisturbed, but something felt terribly wrong. What nobody realized yet was that these 2 cases weren't separate. They were horrifyingly connected. And the woman who claimed to have given birth was about to be exposed as a murderer. Act 2. Timeline of Discovery. Tiffany Hall and Jamila Tunstall had known each other for years. Not just friends, they called each other sisters. They grew up in the same neighborhood, laughed together, cried together, even became teenage mothers around the same time. Their lives were messy, unstable, but bonded by shared trauma. But behind that closeness was a slow unraveling. Tiffany had a violent history, setting fires, fighting with her family, abusing her own child so severely that her daughter had lifelong disabilities. Jamila, on the other hand, was trying to climb out of her hardships. She lost custody of her kids once, but worked to get them back. She enrolled in community college. She wanted to become a photographer. She walked her kids to the bus stop every day. She was 7 months pregnant, full of hope, when she disappeared. The night Tiffany showed up with a dead baby, she held a funeral just days later, showing up late, acting strangely, and confusing everyone present. But the moment she confessed to her Navy boyfriend that she cut the baby out of Jamila, everything snapped into place. Act 3. The Victims and Their Life. Jamila Tunstall was the embodiment of determination. She had lived through foster homes, poverty, and single motherhood. She gave her 3 kids everything she had. She was fiercely protective, never let them out of her sight. Even in their rough East St. Louis housing project, Jamila created a world of laughter and structure. DeAndre, 7, was the oldest, a quiet, thoughtful child who watched over his siblings like a little protector. Ivan, 2, was full of energy, already mimicking his mom's habits, rubbing lotion on his little sister's cheeks. Janelle, the baby, barely a year old, was still discovering her world, crawling, babbling, laughing at shadows. And then there was the unborn child, a daughter Jamila never got to meet, a baby who was never named. All of them would die within hours of each other. If you think this is one of the most disturbing betrayals imaginable, hit the like button, because what happens next will stay with you for a long time. Act 4. Crime Scene Breakdown. After Tiffany's boyfriend contacted police about her chilling confession, authorities raced to uncover the truth. They found Jamila's body 6 days after she disappeared, dumped in a weedy lot near Tiffany's home. Her wrists and ankles were bound with duct tape, her mouth was taped shut. She had been beaten unconscious with a table leg. And then, while still alive, Tiffany used a pair of scissors to cut the unborn baby from her womb. It was pure horror, a scene ripped straight out of a nightmare. Near the remains, officers found those same scissors, stained. Tiffany had then wrapped Jamila's body in a shower curtain and left her to rot in an overgrown field like she meant nothing. But as unspeakable as that was, it wasn't the end. 3 innocent children were still missing. Act 5. Suspicion and Lies. After Tiffany's arrest, she initially refused to cooperate, but under pressure, her wall of lies cracked. She told investigators where to find Jamila's children. Police re-entered Jamila's apartment and were immediately hit by a foul, rotting odor. They opened the washing machine and found 2 of the children's naked bodies stuffed inside. The 3rd child was inside the dryer. All had been murdered. All had been left to decompose inside the appliances, in the very home they once played in. Tiffany claimed she had picked up the children under the pretense that their mother wanted them back. She bathed them, then drowned them, one by one, in the same tub where she had murdered their mother. The killer's method was chilling, methodical, and planned. Authorities discovered that Tiffany had been pretending to be pregnant for months. She had bought prenatal vitamins, a fake birth kit, scissors, and rubbing alcohol. She was desperate to get her boyfriend, stationed in the Navy, to come home. The fake baby was her bait. Jamila's children were just collateral in her twisted fantasy. Act 6, the turning point. In court, Tiffany Hall looked blank, cold. She was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder: Jamila, her unborn baby, and her 3 children. But instead of taking her case to trial, she pleaded guilty. The prosecutors agreed to remove the death penalty in exchange for 5 life sentences without parole. Yet, that wasn't the end. In the years following her sentencing, Tiffany would try to reverse her guilty plea, claiming her mental health wasn't properly evaluated. She filed petitions, appeals, and complaints, trying to claw her way back into court. But every document, every psychiatric report only confirmed the same truth. Tiffany Hall was calculated, she was capable, she knew exactly what she was doing. But every document, every psychiatric report only confirmed the same truth. Tiffany Hall was calculated, she was capable, she knew exactly what she was doing. What she wanted was Jamila's life, and she was willing to kill everyone in it to have it. Act 7, psychology and motive. What drives someone to butcher their best friend, rip an unborn child from her womb, and drown 3 innocent children? Forensic psychologists and legal experts struggled to explain Tiffany Hall's actions. On the surface, it looked like jealousy, delusion, and deep-seated psychosis. She and Jamila weren't just friends, they called each other sisters. But while Jamila had begun building a better life, Tiffany's was unraveling. She'd lost custody of her kids, faked a pregnancy, and desperately tried to pull her Navy boyfriend back home. Tiffany didn't want a baby. She wanted attention, a narrative, a reset. And when Jamila became pregnant, with the very life Tiffany wished she had, something cracked. Mental health reports later diagnosed her with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, PTSD, psychotic disorder, mild intellectual disability. She had a long history of institutionalization and abuse, dating back to childhood. But these diagnoses didn't explain the methodical nature of the crime. She planned it, bought the scissors, lured her victim, hid the bodies. She held a fake funeral. She played the grieving mother. This wasn't a moment of madness. It was madness sculpted into a plan. Act 8, aftermath and emotional echo. On June 10, 2008, Tiffany Hall was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 5 lives, 5 futures, gone. She later tried to reverse her guilty plea, claiming her lawyers were ineffective and that her mental fitness hadn't been fully assessed. Courts dismissed her motions again and again. But in 2020, she managed to reopen her post-conviction petition. As of today, Tiffany Hall remains incarcerated at Logan Correctional Center in Illinois. She's 42 years old, and she will likely die behind bars. Meanwhile, Jamila and her children, DeAndre, Ivan, and Janella, were buried together in Mound City, Illinois. Her stillborn daughter, initially buried alone, was later exhumed and laid to rest beside them, finally reunited in peace. The community raised over $330,000 to support the family's funeral expenses and recovery. But no amount of money could erase the trauma left behind. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was annihilation from someone who once held their trust. And now, we ask you, is life in prison enough for Tiffany Hall? If you believe justice was served, hit that like button. If this case broke your heart like it did ours, let us know in the comments. And if you want to see more real stories that shake you to your core, subscribe and turn on the bell, because some crimes are too disturbing to ignore.